you're a DoorDasher and you're applying for a project engineer and you applied within like 1 second of when we posted the position, obviously you're not a good fit. However, yes, timing is everything because hiring managers want their candidates right away most of the time. Now, there are positions where it does take some time, can take months to fill, but I will say, from my experience, that the time frame is pretty short. Hiring managers do want to interview right away, want to schedule, want to start the candidate within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Although, of course, that's not always realistic, but timing is everything.
Before we start the show, I have a quick question for you. Is your resume stuck in the rejection pile? At Resume Assassin, I create powerful resumes that showcase your skills, experience, and achievements, getting you noticed by recruiters. I'll also optimize your LinkedIn profile, transforming it into a magnet for opportunity. Visit resumeassassin.com today and take charge of your job search. Visit resumeassassin.com. Welcome to Resume Assassin Presents Recruiting Insider, where I create a safe space to have candid conversations with recruiters and LinkedIn thought leaders. This podcast promises to inform, entertain, and inspire. Hey guys, welcome back. So I'm really excited about today's episode, and you should be too, because we're digging into the applicant tracking system, or also known as the ATS. And more specifically, we'll be busting the myths of the ATS. And, I was reading a recent Forbes article, and they stated that 99% of Fortune 500 companies use an ATS in their recruitment and hiring process. And so, companies often hire for multiple positions at once, and they receive hundreds, if not thousands, of applicants for each job opening, which is absolutely insane. So when a recruiter or a hiring manager receives that many resumes, it's not feasible for them to carefully review, every single one of them. So the ATS really makes searching easier, or even, automated, saving time and sometimes even removing unqualified people. And so, I speak with a lot of job seekers every single day, and really what I've uncovered is no one really has a great understanding of what it is and how it works. And so, I've also seen people in actually so many posts on LinkedIn where people talk about getting auto-rejected by the ATS, and people are just kind of wrestling with so many myths and misconceptions about these systems, which literally probably leaves them wondering how to get their resume past that first hurdle, right? So today I've got super recruiter Sylvanna Berkowitz in the studio here to bust some of those darn ATS myths. So Sylvanna, welcome to Recruiting Insider.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you for having me on this platform. And this is also one of my favorite topics as a recruiter because we get so many hate mails, I would say, from candidates, which is understandably so. So I'm here to just explain the ATS process, answer, just the standard, myths about the ATS processes. So I'm here to answer any questions for that.
Love it. So let's just dive right in. What's an ATS and how does it work?
Yes. So an ATS is pretty much just a filing system for companies to use, to where they can track every candidates that's applied in the system. It's also used for internal processes. So for example, when this candidate does get hired, they already have the person's information, there's their phone number, address, banking information that they can already have in place when this person does get hired. And what was your second question?
And how does it work?
How does it work? Okay. How does it work is on the recruiter side. So obviously, the candidates enters in their information on the company website. They fill in all the information that's required, upload their, resume. And from there, me as a recruiter, I go through my job recs, because that's the only way you're able to apply is the candidate apply through a job rec. So me, I'm going through the job rec, going through the candidates who's applied with their resume, and that's how me as a recruiter uses that. So I filter through certain keywords.
Okay. And so can you clarify for our audience, are you an internal recruiter, a corporate recruiter, or are you an agency recruiter?
I am a corporate recruiter,
Okay.
been a corporate recruiter for 3 years now, but extensive experience on the agency side.
What are the top three most common ATS myths that you hear most often?
Oh gosh, the number one I always hear is that there's this artificial intelligence that's automatically rejecting candidates because they're not including certain keywords in their resume. It's a recruiter that's rejecting you. Now, me, I parse through the resumes because I do make sure that there are keywords in the resumes, because I'm here to find the most qualified candidate for my hiring managers. Now, there is another caveat to that, which is, we're bringing on to the second part where you do get automatically rejected. So when that happens, it's because you didn't answer certain questions correctly, or maybe that's not the right word. But for example, when you're applying, right, and it's asking you, hey, do you have 3 years experience in accounts payable or something like that? And you put 1 or, 0, then at that point, that is an automatic rejection because that is not what the company is looking for. So I hope that makes sense. And a third myth would be that, companies are just posting, or an ATS is just posting fake job recs out there, which is just personally, like, no company will want to waste their time, posting, a fake job position for just what, to collect candidates information. I highly doubt that for companies. So I hope that I was able to, provide some context.
What about those people that say, I meet all of the minimum requirements and I received auto rejection at 2 o'clock in the morning?
The truth is, there are just other candidates that are candidates that are just way better, in regards to experience level. It doesn't mean that candidate who's got the minimum experience won't be able to do the job. But as a recruiter, if we're looking through hundreds of resumes, we want to present and pull the most qualified, the most experienced, the most candidates who are, who fit the job description, and send them over to the manager. So in that aspect, yes, unfortunately, when the recruiter reviews that resume and say, hey, this person has the minimum qualifications, but I already have like 10 extremely well-qualified candidates, that recruiter selected, rejection, and that email will automatically be sent to you. Now, on the recruiter side, we are able to choose how many days the rejection email will be sent. So for example, I can select, this candidate will get the rejection email right away, or I can wait 3 business days, which probably why candidates receive rejection emails on Saturdays, because the recruiter probably selected, the time frame on a Thursday or Friday. So that's why they're getting rejections on the weekends at 2 a.m.
Yeah, sure. So if that's the case, and we all know that companies and recruiters are receiving hundreds and thousands of applicants, is it best to be in the first 25% or the top 25% of people applying to that position?
Absolutely. It's best to be the top candidate, but also I would say most importantly is timing.
Or sorry, that's what I meant, like in terms of how quick they applied.
Oh, absolutely. Timing is everything. Now, if you're if you're, a door dasher and you're applying for a project engineer and you
Yeah.
applied within like 1 second of when we posted the position, obviously you're not a good fit.
Yeah.
However, yes, timing is everything because hiring managers want their candidates right away. Most of the time. Now there are positions where it does take some time, can take months to fill, but I will say, from my experience, that the time frame is pretty short. Hiring managers do want to interview right away, want to, schedule, want to start the candidate, within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Although, of course, that's not always realistic, but timing is everything.
Absolutely. And you alluded to, candidates who don't require those or don't meet those minimum qualifications. And I've heard the first round of ATS questions be called knockout questions. And, and those are kind of like potentially in the style of like check boxes or even short
Yes.
answer questions where you're just trying to get a feel for, do you, like you said, do you meet the 3 years of accounts payable experience requirement that this position is looking for? And really the purpose of that is to narrow the pool of applicants. So, filters are used by the software essentially to eliminate those unqualified candidates. So, many times they're looking for experience, but sometimes it's like education, certifications. I've even heard work authorizations. So, if you don't give the correct answer to any of the knockout questions, essentially your resume will either be, flagged or auto rejected by the ATS. Is that correct? Or
Yeah,
is that a myth, or is that correct?
that is correct if the questions are there. The questions are there because recruiters do want to know to make sure that you do meet the minimum qualifications. Like, if you don't have 3 years experience in accounts payable and you put in one, then there's really no need for us to, just call you because we are sifting through so many candidates. And not only are recruiters working on one position, some of them are working 20 to 30 positions at a time. So imagine that times the amount of candidates that apply. Now, something to consider as well, and I'd like to add this, is that I would say 50% of the candidates that do apply for one position are not qualified for the position. So if you're ever on LinkedIn and you see like, oh, there's like, 500 people that's applied, that's probably like 50% of those candidates are not qualified for the position. So don't let that deter you from applying.
Yeah, I mean, I think I read a statistic somewhere on LinkedIn that said if you meet 60% of the requirements, it's still okay to apply to that position. So what if that is the case? What if somebody meets the 60% of the qualifications, but, maybe they don't answer one of those knockout questions correctly?
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, then do they still have a shot?
Um, I think so because in those situations, I can think of a scenario that I have, encountered. So whenever I've exhausted the candidates that were, qualified, who've checked all the boxes, and, for whatever reason, the hiring manager's like, no, maybe I'm just not feeling these candidates, then at that point, that candidate is still in our system. I can still reference, those candidates and just like, just review their resume and just think to myself like, like these candidates were not working out, who were, fully qualified. Let me, you know, go through a different direction in my conversation and my route, and talk to that person who was 60% qualified and go from there. So there is a chance,
Yeah.
recruiters are here to fill the job rec that we have been tasked with to fill.
So with that 60% person, has there ever been a time where you've been like, oh, maybe they're not the best fit for this position, but then you recommend them for a different position within the company?
Yes, that does happen, but what happens more in my
Hmm.
case
Hmm.
is, I sent my hiring managers, my candidates, and there's this, one candidate who I feel that okay, maybe the hiring manager might not select this person
Hmm.
because there's this person that has checked the box and whatnot. And it's really surprising for what the hiring manager or who the hiring manager chooses. And I've had this experience where the hiring manager selects the candidate with who I thought wouldn't have been selected for the job.
Hmm.
So that's
Yeah.
always been like a really good thing.
Yeah, that's cool.
Mhm.
And maybe they were a better culture fit. So I guess the bottom line is if you meet 60% of those requirements, apply to the position. You've got nothing to lose there.
I highly recommend that. Like you have 60% of the job description. Why not apply? All
Yeah.
you can do is all it's just you get rejected and that's it, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I would like to add too, it's
Hmm.
just like networking is very viable in
Hmm.
this environment that we're in, because we have so many candidates that's out there. So networking, who just find different channels to find, a good communication channel to recruiter, I think is the best option.
Yes. Love it. Go back to episode 7. I spoke with Tanya Ledman in depth
Mhm.
about networking. So yeah, definitely check that episode out. And I think one of the biggest myths that I've heard, and you've already kind of alluded to this, but it's that the ATS automatically rejects resumes. So you've already kind of busted that, but I want to dig in just a little bit more because
Sure.
I've heard that, let's say it's a Fortune 500 company, they're receiving thousands and thousands of applicants, many of which are not qualified at all. Do some of those companies actually use a feature that auto rejects resumes?
That's a good question. In my professional experience, I do not know any software yet.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps,
Mm-hmm.
with, ChatGPT here,
Mm-hmm.
that may be happening. But from my experience, no, like I haven't seen or used a system where, candidates just get rejected just because.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that's a good research topic. I can
Okay.
definitely look it up afterwards.
So if you don't meet the minimum qualifications, possibly, but you still have recruiter eye on
Hmm.
those resumes. So I've also read a statistic somewhere on the internet that's I think is a myth probably, but I want to
Yeah.
bring it up here in this conversation. And it's that 75% of resumes are never seen by human eyes because they're filtered out
Oh,
by the ATS. Is this true, or is the rejection actually coming from a human?
the rejection is coming from a human. Like you had mentioned earlier, we get hundreds of resumes.
Mm-hmm.
So, if I can just explain, so if I have 100 resumes and the first three or five I've seen are like knockouts.
Yeah.
Though, and I've spoken to those candidates. They're interested in, conversation. So it's all, aligning with what we're looking for and what our candidates are looking for. I'm already getting ready to submit those five candidates, even though the sixth candidate, who I have not seen, may also be qualified for the position. There's already five extremely qualified candidates I've already sent to the manager. So then that means me as a recruiter can move on to my next position that needs candidates and needs interviews.
So might you keep that sixth person on file if if the first five don't work out?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. We always want to keep people, on, in line for if anything doesn't work out.
Yeah. And I think another myth that I hear all the time is that the ATS only considers like exact keyword matches. Is that true?
What was the question? The ATS what?
So another myth that I hear all of the time, the ATS only considers exact keyword matches. Is that true?
It's true in a sense that that is what the recruiter typed. So,
Mm,
so for example, the candidate's resume is already in our system, right?
mm-hmm.
So me as a recruiter can search in that system, say, hey, I need someone who's in accounts payable,
Mm,
but they need to have SAP software experience. So
mm,
those two keywords will pull the candidates who have accounts payable in their resume and SAP in their resume. So if they don't
okay.
have the SAP experience, keyword in their resume, they're not going to be pulled up because me as a human type that I'm
Yeah.
looking for an accounts payable with SAP experience, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What if it's something like a keyword that's not a specific technology that you're looking for? So, maybe somebody uses a specific keyword that essentially means the same thing, but you typed in a
Oh,
different keyword. Would that still
yeah.
be caught in the ATS?
Um, in this example, no. The
Okay.
recruiter would have to include those different, like all the keywords that
Hmm.
would be in that resume. Like the ATS doesn't pull, oh, you
Yeah.
typed in SAP, but you might also need to type in, a longer, version because
Yeah.
SAP is a abbreviation. So
Mm.
maybe a candidate didn't put the abbreviation, but put, like the
Mm.
whole word. So yeah, unfortunately, in that aspect, it's up to the recruiter to make sure that they include all the little,
Yeah.
little titles, little job titles that could possibly be for an accounts payable. So in addition to typing in accounts payable, I type in AP,
Yeah.
so that way it pulls up
Yeah.
the candidates who I'm looking for.
Yeah, what this is telling me, for any of our listeners that are in the seat of a job seeker, is this is exactly why it's so important for you to really review that specific job description really, really closely.
Hmm.
Because, typically when a recruiter or a hiring manager is writing a job description, they'll very, very clearly lay out what is required, what's a required skill or experience within that specific position. And if you have that skill and that experience, use that language and pull that up and highlight it, because the
Yeah.
ATS will catch it, the recruiter will catch it, and you'll be more likely to be in that top 5 or that top 10 of resumes that are being passed off to the hiring manager. So what types of formats are most suitable for the ATS?
Good question. I love that. Simple and boring.
Hmm.
Simple and boring, bullet points, black and white, Word document, like no heading. Because when you transfer your Word document with all these different like formattings, it doesn't format easily. So you have to like go back and forth. So it's really, recruiters absolutely prefer simple and boring formats. Like there's no need to be like creative, like all these different colors. Like recruiters do not really care for that. We really just look at, okay, this person has the experience, the software knowledge, the certifications. Great, check, 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 and move on.
I'm going to push back on that a little bit, because I am a fan of using color in resume writing and putting just a little bit of flair on it, just in terms of, writing it in a way that's going to really draw attention to the recruiter or the hiring manager of different places, and different experiences and different skills that you really want them to look at. Where, yeah, it's not something that you have to do in order to, beat the applicant tracking system, quote unquote. But I think it is something that can be nice to help you stand out as a candidate when you're really using different strategies, even if it is just using black and white, but doing that in a way to really draw the attention to the different areas of your resume that you really want to be seen and read. So
Yeah.
I've heard a myth out there, and I want you to tell me if this is a myth or not, that ATS can't read color, because I'm under the impression that, they're sophisticated enough to actually read the color, but, they're what you want to look out for is just making sure that it's simple, like you said, and kind of a up and down format. So don't use any columns or anything like that, because the ATS isn't going to, parse your information correctly if you do things like that.
Yes, that is true, because in the formatting stage, it's just tabs. So like the ATS pulls the tab where you put in your job title. Then it pulls in the tab for your, for the date of when you got hired, and then your responsibilities. So it's not going to pull the different colors that, a candidate may have put in their resume, because it parses it to a text document in the ATS software. But absolutely really good points, what you've mentioned.
Yeah. So, I mean, of course, like an automated or an applicant tracking system won't read the color, but it could potentially help, if you're using it to stand out to the hiring manager, I suppose.
Yes, I wanted to add to what you're saying. Your resume will still be attached to your profile, if that makes sense. So, in the ATS, you have your profile. We have like your text format, of your experience, but then also in your profile, there is your resume attached to it, where we can see like your original formatted resume.
I love that you said that, because a lot of people do spend a lot of time making sure that their resume looks really good and is perfected. So it's nice that, if you know that you have a format and a resume that'll be parsed correctly by the ATS, but then it's still being attached when it's sent off to the hiring manager. So,
yes.
Yeah. So what are the top 3 things that job seekers should know about the ATS to make sure, or, okay, let me say that again. What are the top 3 things that job seekers should know about the ATS to ensure that their resume passes through the ATS and lands in the hands of the hiring manager?
Top 3 things would be to make sure that your resume reflects the job description. I mean, even though if your resume doesn't have the like specific keywords from the job description, your resume will still go through and you can create your profile. You'll still be in that job, as a candidate under that job rec. But it's important to include keywords from the job description, because me as a recruiter is looking for those specific keywords. So you may be using a software that's called something different, but then it's the same at your company, but for, from the job description, it's like the same, same keyword, but just like in a different, different word or, spelling. Definitely include that in your, in your resume. Make sure that you have your contact information. I have seen multiple times when candidates aren't, don't include like their email, don't include their phone number, because like I mentioned earlier, timing is key. If you have your email, I can shoot you an email. If you have your phone number, I can just, give you a ring. So absolutely make sure that your contact information is on there. And then thirdly, I think formatting is key on your, on your resume, because it would just reduce your time of having to like edit and like go back and forth. And I know candidates are applying on, to so many jobs. It can be exhausting filling in the same thing, same information over and over again.
Yes. I always recommend looking at the first 3 to 5 qualifications within the job description, and the first 3 to 5 job duties, really, and then incorporating some of that language into your resume. And you should, even if you're applying to, 10 jobs in one day or 100 jobs in one day, you should do this every single time you apply to a position.
Highly recommend that, Mary, because I know how exhausting that can be. Because I mean, I was a candidate myself. Like I did that. And I got tired of it. I had to like step away from a test, because I'm like, oh my gosh, my mind's going crazy. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm just done. The
Yeah.
application is not application, it's not applicating.
Yeah, yeah. But it's so important because if you are taking the time to apply to that position, you want to make sure that you're doing everything in your power to give yourself the best shot of landing in the top 5 that Sylvanna said that she was passing off to the hiring manager.
Absolutely, 100%. Like put that in your summary. So I'm like, okay, bang, like this
Yeah.
person's got the experience, bang, bang, bang.
Boom. Yeah. So from a recruiter's perspective, what are some of the biggest mistakes that job seekers make when applying through an ATS?
Just not, like, again, not entering in their information
Yeah.
correctly. Just being very mindful of what's included because I have seen candidates attach like personal, like they may have meant to put in their resume, but I saw like a mortgage statement one
Yeah.
time and I was like, oh my gosh. So
Somebody sent me
be
their child's birth certificate before.
no way. And yeah, like just be very, very mindful. I mean, I can't think of a third thing that job seekers should be careful. I think we've covered just how
Yeah.
important like keywords are.
Yeah.
Making sure that you're reflecting your resume against the job description and doing that to every job application, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think it comes down to quality over quantity when it comes to applying to
Absolutely.
jobs too, So don't spend endless hours a week online filling out hundreds of applications. Like you're just going to get burnt out if you do that. And I found that when you're writing a resume specifically for a position, it's best to have a fresh set of eyes on it. So when one is done, walk away from your computer, take a break, maybe spend some time networking, and then,
Hmm.
you'd probably be even better served when you go to start applying to that next job. And then, also take some time to find a recruiter on LinkedIn or connect with some people within the company that you're targeting and start, networking and growing, your opportunities in that way. That can be really beneficial as well. Another thing that
I'm
I've
glad
heard
you
is,
mentioned that.
go
I'm glad
ahead.
you
Yeah.
mentioned that. Absolutely. Like it's absolutely important to like step away, and just stepping away 10 minutes or maybe like the next day, and then looking at your resume again with a fresh eye because
Yeah.
it's just it can be overwhelming. And I like that you mentioned, connecting and networking with recruiters. I would also like to add networking with the employees that work at
Yes.
that company.
Yes.
Just be and also be genuine about it. Keep it short and sweet, because through your communication with current employees there, you're able to actually truly see, the company culture and
Yeah.
how those employees feel about working for that company.
Yeah, don't connect with an employee and right away be like, "Hey, can you do this, this, and this for me?"
Yeah, don't do
That's not going to get
that.
you very far.
No. Exactly. Yeah, that's a very good point. Like, don't say, "Hey, I want to work at your company. Tell
Yeah.
me who it is." No, that's not to go about it.
Yeah. So, what advice can you give job seekers who are just feeling super discouraged by the ATS and the application process right now?
I would say, thank you for that question. I would say just it's okay to take some time away from applying. Um, the reason why I said that is I looked for a job. I thankfully I was still employed, but in order for me to land my new job now, it took me like almost six months. And I can only imagine those who are unemployed, who are not working. So definitely don't be afraid to take a few days off, maybe just a
Yeah.
week. Step away from applying, enjoy, go out, walk, play with your dog. So I think that is absolutely crucial in this job market is to just take care of your mental health.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And I love that you said that because, even 8 months, 12 months ago, I was seeing applicants apply, and then receive interviews for, 60-75% of the applications or the resumes that they submit. And now, like you said, it's taking people 6 months to a year just because, the job market is so saturated. And even those people who are happily employed, I read a statistic that 75% of happily employed people in the United States are still passively searching. So that makes it even more competitive, where it's like, I'm not just going up against people who desperately need a job at this point.
Yeah.
I'm also going up against people who are happily employed and are just applying to, passively applying to these positions just in case. So yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad, you've mentioned that that was the reason for me looking was I did feel that at any point, like I had fully transparent, I had a bad performance review.
Yeah.
And I saw that and took that and I said, yeah, this is this is like sooner or later, I'm going to be let go. And so that's, he gave me the initiative to start looking.
Yep. So what are the top 3 takeaways you want our listeners to learn today?
Sure. Top takeaways. The ETS is not some artificial intelligence that will reject you. So just take that out of your mind. It's important to make sure that you're updating your resume all throughout, like even while you're fully employed, because you might forget your accomplishments by the time that you're ready to look for another job. So make sure that you're constantly updating your resume. And while and network. Like I would say it's more important than having a good resume.
Yeah. So what are you up to now, Sylvanna, and where can we find you on social media?
Sure, you can find me on LinkedIn. I try to post daily. I mostly post humorous stuff there. And I enjoy posting, like just making people laugh. From there, I've actually gained some, LinkedIn friends, which is really cool. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm currently a corporate recruiter for Recurrent Energy. We are a solar and battery storage, project company. So that's where I am. Also, I do have a big network in oil and gas. I was in oil and gas previously, so I'm happy to connect with your listeners if they need any sort of, help.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you so much for having me. This has been really fun.
Thanks for listening. I will be releasing episodes every Monday, so be sure to subscribe on the platform that you are watching this, give it a 5-star review, and we'll see you next time.